Good evening, welcome back to Crochet with Lulu. Grab the yarn of your choice, the hook size of your choice. I'm using a size G or a 4.5 millimeter. It is a Boyd hook, 4.25 millimeter, excuse me. It's a G/6 and it is a Boyd hook. And then I have some yarn. The yarn is really too small for this hook, but it's the closest thing I had already down here in the basement. We start with our slip knot. We're going to make a cross bookmark. And here again, I'm just gonna reiterate, get the color of your choice, the yarn of your choice, and the hook size that's comparable to the yarn, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You will hear noises upstairs. I'm in the basement. Okay, you're gonna start with the chain of 5. This yarn is very splitty. You're gonna join to the first, and you're gonna take this finger and kind of pull that tight so that we don't have such a large ring. You just need a small ring because all we're gonna do is work, essentially we're starting a granny square. So you're gonna start with the chain of 2, that counts as our first double crochet. You're gonna put 2 more double crochets for that cluster. Now I'm kind of doing this a little tight, just so that my stitches are tight. When I was doing a practice run a few minutes ago, I pulled it it was too loose and it just didn't look right. So this yarn, you have to keep check on it. You have to keep pulling it tight. Chain 2, we have our first granny cluster. We're gonna work a total of 4 granny clusters, and that granny cluster is a set of 3 double crochets with a chain 2 space. So if you want to jump ahead, feel free to stop. Go ahead and do 4 sets of 3 granny clusters with a chain 2 space between them. Now if you notice, this left index finger keeps pulling it tightly so that it does not get really loose. We're starting our 3rd granny cluster. Some people like the magic ring. If you like the magic ring, be my guest. I don't like the magic ring. I don't like it. Now, what I should have done before I done my chain 2 is make sure that stitch was tight, but that's okay. So now we've got 3 sets in there. We need 1 more set. Now before I do that chain 2, I'm gonna pull me off some yarn here. I'm gonna take this tail and I'm gonna go ahead and tighten up that ring. You just don't want a large space. Chain 2, and then you're gonna count, and this is a little hard to see because it is such a splitty yarn, even with the hook size comparable to the yarn, it's still a very splitty yarn. And I'm not seeing so well down here, so I may have a big split. Okay, now we are going to slip stitch into the next stitch because we need over here in this space. So we're just gonna, if I can keep my yarn on there. Okay, let's put that little filler back on there. That's going to be kind of splitty, so just overlook the splits. Okay, we need to slip stitch in this space here. Okay, so we're going to chain 2, which counts as our first double crochet. We're going to put one more double crochet, one more double crochet, chain 2, and then instead of doing our traditional 3 more double crochets, we're going to put 2 double crochets. Then we're going to do something a little odd. Some of you will be very familiar with this. We're going to chain 2, and then we're going to take this and join it with a slip stitch to the bottom of that. Now that counts as our 3rd double crochet. And then you're going to chain 1 to get that. Then you are going to slip stitch through that one and through the next one, because we need back over here in this other corner space, we're making the top part of the cross, the T part of the cross. We chain 2, we put 2 more double crochets, let me get me some yarn here. And then we're going to pull that tight. Always pull with your left hand, or if you're left-handed, pull with your right index finger to make that tight. Do 2 more double crochets in that corner space. Keep pulling it tight. And it's kind of hard for me to see in the camera if I'm in focus, so I'm hoping I'm in focus. Okay, now do chain of 2. Now instead of slip stitching, we're just going to go ahead and do a single crochet when we get right there. Now we're going to go into this corner space. We're going to do excuse me, I jumped just a little bit ahead of myself, and that happens, so forgive me. It's been a while since I've done a tutorial, and I haven't done a tutorial at all in this space. So I've got my chain of 2. I'm going to join with a single crochet. Then I'm going to pull that tight. I'm going to slip stitch into that first double crochet, slip stitch into that next double crochet, and then slip stitch into the space. Chain 2, two double crochets, so what you're essentially doing is in each corner space, like you would a granny square, you're putting 3 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets, a chain of 2, and then you're joining with a single crochet into that space. That attaches this section to this square here. So we've got our first cluster, we've got our chain of 2, we do 2 more double crochets. Keep your index finger, whichever finger you're using to hold your yarn, keep it pulled very tightly. Now we have our first set, chain 2, and then we've done our 2 double crochets, and then we chain 2. Now what happens if you do like I tried it when I was first trying this pattern? You could essentially do another double crochet, but that double crochet is going to kind of stick up like the rest of them. And you really don't want that double crochet sticking up. You kind of want it to lay down. So you're going to go into this double crochet and slip stitch. Go into the next one, slip stitch. Go into the space and slip stitch. Now what we've done here, this is the top of your cross. Let me pull this out here. This is the top of your cross. This is the T, and you just have to kind of play with your stitches to make sure that they're all, you can block this when you finish it, or you can starch it, or I use the Elmer School Glue if you like it thick, stiff. Whew, my words are not coming out again. Okay, now we're going to do the bottom. So it's a little different. We're in this empty space, so we're going to put chain of 2. We're going to go back in there and put 2 more double crochets. Chain 2. Three double crochets. Now we're going back to our traditional 3 double crochets for the cluster. Now I have split the stitch. Now you're at the bottom of the stitch, so what you're going to do is you're going to chain 1 and you're going to turn your work, and then you're going to slip stitch back into this, and then you're going to slip stitch back into this. We are going to build the bottom part of the cross 3 sections, 3 levels. For whatever reason, my phone cut off, so I'm not sure what's going on. So we're going to do this. We have 2 sections. We've slip stitched into the center ring. We chain 2, which counts as our first double crochet. We're doing another granny cluster, 3 double crochets, chain 2, three double crochets. Now when you end this, what I was saying before I got so rudely cut off is you're essentially doing granny clusters, as you know. Now, if you want to, you can go back up here after you're finished and make a tassel. Now, what you're going to want to do is what I was telling you before that I got cut off at is once I get my stitches placed how I want them. Of course, I'm going to snip this. If I had scissors, I would snip it, but I don't have my scissors down here. I've got, I don't know how many pair upstairs, but do you think I brought any down here? No. Okay, so this tail, we can cut it off. We've already crocheted over it. It's finished. And then this one, if you want to, you could leave this on there and put you some beads or buttons to hang off the bottom. If you don't want beads or buttons, you can go back up here. Now what I do is I figure out how long I want my tassel. I'm gonna just kind of show you a little bit of what I do here. What I do is I take my thread and I fix it as long as I want it. And then I just keep winding it back and forth, till I have about 5 times. And then I cut it. Once you cut it, you can take this. Now remember, I don't have my scissors, so I'm just doing a pretend. So I would go in like that and pull this up, and I would pull this back through, and of course this, pretend like this is not there. And then I would just take my scissors and cut it off the height that I wanted it. And this is fringe. It's like fringe. Or you could go the whole 9 yards and make a thick tassel. Just remember, this part's gonna hang out of your book. You could put beads and all of that on the top part. But there is your bookmark. Now, if you want it stiff, I like Elmer's glue. And what I do is I get me a piece of wax paper, I lay it out on my table, and then I would lay this on top, and then I would wet it really wet with the Elmer's glue and leave it. Working the stitches as I wet it, working the stitches, pulling out those parts that I want pulled out, rearranging the double crochets, the single crochets, all of that, getting it to where I want it, wet it and leave it. Then maybe before I go to bed, I would come in and I would pull it off the wax paper and turn it over, wet it again, work it again, and leave it. And then the next day it should be dry enough. If you don't want to leave it on that wax paper, peel it off and lay it across something that's going to get some ventilation to both sides. And you have your cross bookmark. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it's made sense. And I hope you will like, subscribe, and share my channel. I will be doing some more, hopefully before Easter. We may do another bookmark. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Thank you. Bye-bye.